What I learned from my biggest relationship regret. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. At 7:58 p.m., my ex texted, "Please don't go in." I was already outside the wine bar, collar straightened, palms damp, trying to remember how to be a person who smiled without checking a phone. I'm Alex, 30, library archivist, professionally calm. My day job is quiet heroics, preserving what people thought would be lost. Tonight, I wanted to preserve a small, brave version of myself. The message pulsed again. "Please, I need 5 minutes." Steadiness is currency in archives. You log, you label, you resist panic when a century-old letter flakes apart. I try to bring that steadiness to relationships, too. With Maya, steadiness became surrender. I kept offering calm to a storm that kept growing to meet my capacity. We broke up 2 months ago after 4 years of dizzy cycles. Fireworks, ice, apologies, the long gray middle I called love because I was too tired to call it fear. I told Theo, my best friend, that I was ready to try dating again when I could order coffee without flinching at the sound of Maya's ringtone in someone else's hand. He cheered, then asked if I'd silenced her number. I hadn't. Part of me stayed wired like a smoke detector missing a battery. The bar glowed with the soft vanity of first dates. The host smiled, glanced at the name on the reservation, and gestured to a small table near the window. My phone buzzed a third time. "Please don't go in. It's about someone else. It's urgent." My steadiness felt like a thin library stamp against a flood. I could ignore her and walk in. I could answer and rip open something better left sealed. I imagined the quiet dignity of staying on track. I imagined the violent relief of peeking behind the curtain one last time. I remember the radiator clicking while the hallway light hummed softly. A bus sighed outside, doors folding like a tired accordion in winter. The kettle ticked on the stove, a metronome for my thoughts. My phone face down reflected a thin, trembling line of streetlight. Rain braided down the window, each strand pulling at old memories. Somewhere upstairs a neighbor laughed, the sound brittle and echoing. The elevator cables sang their weary song, a low iron whisper. I could smell citrus cleaner, sharp and clean, almost like apology. My keys formed a small constellation on the table by the door. Traffic rolled like distant surf, steady and indifferent to drama. A dog barked twice, then silence curled back into the room. The clock's second hand clicked forward, tiny and relentless as truth. Wind threaded through the alley, lifting a paper like a white flag. The fridge motor rumbled, then settled, like a chest deciding to breathe. Neon bled through the blinds, painting everything with restless color. Sometimes closure is a door you close yourself, and then keep walking. If I answered, the night would fracture in a way I recognized. Maya had a talent for entrances, sunlight on her hair, an apology already blooming on her lips like a dare. The first month, she texted good morning and good night, sent me photos of street murals and cappuccino foam hearts, called me steady as gravity. I floated. Then came the silences, 20-hour gaps reframed as self-care, unanswered questions inverted into critiques of my curiosity. "You're so anxious," she'd say, holding my face like a mirror she meant to rearrange. "Our history is an illusionist's deck. Pick any memory, and I can show you 2 versions." My birthday last year. She organized a picnic in the park, lanterns strung between 2 modest trees, my friends lined up like patient witnesses. She left to grab ice and returned at midnight with tears and a story about a stranded coworker. I held her while wax puddled at the base of unlit candles. The next day, she called me resilient, which felt like a ribbon on something broken. Theo clocked it early. "That's not spontaneity," he said. "That's you absorbing cost." I shrugged it off. I wanted to be easy. I wanted to be chosen. Being chosen became synonymous with being quiet, and I developed the precise skill of shrinking inside my own yes. The last fresh wound came just before the breakup. I'd booked a small table at the jazz bar she loved, the one with the velvet chairs and the trumpet player who bent notes like questions. She kissed my forehead, said she needed a quick shower, and vanished into a weekend without edges. By Monday, she was radiant and sorry. I accepted the apology like a tip for surviving. I took another breath and let the room settle around me. I tasted metal on my tongue, the flavor of kept silence. Heat hissed through old pipes, a private weather I couldn't control. I didn't know apologies could be currency until mine started buying silence. The first red flag wasn't red. It was beige, plausible, polite. A notification flipped face down as I poured pasta into boiling water. It's not what it looks like, she smiled, though I hadn't asked. Another weekend, her location stopped updating. Battery died, she said, handing me a charger the next day with an exhausted laugh. When I asked about the new key on her ring, she kissed me and said, "Don't make everything a story." I cataloged these moments the way I tagged damaged photographs. Corner tear, waterline, silvering. Each was survivable, and together they formed a pattern I refused to frame. I rationalized like a professional, building proofs for the defense of someone who wasn't in court yet. Maya loved me, I was certain. Maya was complicated, I was certain. I could hold complicated things without breaking, I was certain. Then the stories began to shift mid-sentence. A coworker dinner became a networking event, then an impromptu birthday. Then, "Why are you interrogating me?" I'd back off. Palms up, the way you calm a startled horse. "I trust you," I'd say, meaning, "Please don't bolt." One night, while we watched a documentary about con artists, Maya squeezed my hand and whispered, "People just see what they want." She smiled at the screen, not at me. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I traced circles on her palm, telling myself I was drawing a home. Wind threaded through the alley, lifting a paper like a white flag. The fridge motor rumbled, then settled, like a chest deciding to breathe. Patterns hide best when we volunteer to become their wallpaper. Public Maya adored me. She tucked her arm through mine at dinner parties and told stories about how I rescued rare letters from mold, how I could date a typeface by smell. "He's a genius," she'd say, and people would glance at me with admiring confusion. Private Maya minimized. "You're so literal," she sighed when I asked about a sudden plan change. "I just live in the moment." Theo watched the performance and winced. "She's staging you," he said after a backyard barbecue where Maya toasted my anchor, and then spent an hour on the porch whispering into her phone. That same night, a stranger tagged Maya in a flirty video. 2 cocktails, a slow pan to a familiar sleeve. "Haha, random," she wrote back publicly, followed by a DM I wasn't meant to see. The heart emoji felt surgical. I told myself context mattered. Maybe it was an old clip. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was inventing edges on a cloud. When I asked, gently, she smiled without teeth. "You're exhausting," she said. "I can't breathe around this." I apologized for the oxygen I had not consumed. At home, I sorted postcards by decade and tried not to imagine Maya's phone turned face up in someone else's kitchen. When she slid into bed, she smelled like limes and a smoke machine. "You're my only real one," she whispered into the dark. I nodded into the pillow as if I were taking minutes. Neon bled through the blinds, painting everything with restless color. The video wasn't random. It was a trailer for a movie I knew. The breaking point arrived without breaking anything visible. We argued about boundaries in my kitchen, which has room for 2 people and a truth. I said I needed clarity on plans, a heads up before disappearing acts. She said I was policing her freedom. "You want to schedule my feelings," she snapped, opening a cabinet like it had wronged her. Plates shivered on their shelf. I tried to fold the heat into something soft. "I don't want to control you," I said. "I want to stop feeling like a placeholder." She laughed, a clean sound that made the words sting more. "You're so dramatic," she said. "You always make this about you." I apologized. Of course I did. Peace felt like oxygen after a small fire. Nina called that night. "You keep apologizing for wanting respect," she said. "Love isn't a discount store. Stop bargaining your price." I told her she didn't understand the nuance. She told me nuance is what people build when the facts hurt. We didn't break up that night. We researched rugs online and watched a show where couples renovate houses they shouldn't have bought. By morning, she kissed my forehead and vanished into another plan. My kitchen cooled. My truth stayed standing in the middle of the floor, waiting to be named. The clock's second hand clicked forward, tiny and relentless as truth. The bill for all my discounts arrived disguised as a small request. Suspicion didn't ignite with a bang. It flickered like a pilot light catching. I found the clue by accident at the phone repair kiosk where Maya had begged me to drop off her cracked screen because she was slammed. The technician handed me a claim ticket and, by mistake, a printed backup log. 2 calendars showed under her profile, one I knew, one labeled with initials I didn't. A rideshare history on the receipt had overlapping pickups, a pattern that didn't match the alibis I'd archived in my head. I stared at the paper the way I look at a mislabeled photograph, not accusing, just interested in what the truth would rearrange. I told myself it was nothing. Then I took a picture. Then I took 3. At home, I sat at my small table and arranged the screenshots like artifacts. The second key I'd noticed weeks ago. The duplicate calendar. The rides at hours I'd been asleep after arguing us into peace. I decided to verify, quietly, like a professional. No confrontations, no dramatic speeches. Just dates, times, places. If it was a misunderstanding, the facts would fold neatly. If it wasn't, I'd finally stop ironing chaos into order and calling it love. A dog barked twice, then silence curled back into the room. The receipts didn't whisper. They sang the same haunting, practiced melody. I ran a phone backup from the cloud account Maya had once logged into on my laptop, a convenience turned confession. The export unfurled into folders, chats, media, calendar caches. Timestamps contradicted the sagas I'd believed. A selfie in a mirror I didn't recognize, posted at 12:17 a.m. the night she said she slept through her alarm. A rideshare receipt to an address I'd never visited, 15 minutes after a call where she'd cried about missing me too much to go out. I traced overlapping nights like a cartographer of storms. The files weren't dramatic, they were precise. A dinner reservation for 2 under a name I knew as an inside joke alias. A recurring reminder labeled storage, wedged into Wednesday evenings I'd been told were for yoga. I scrolled until the patterns formed an outline I could no longer shade in with benefit of doubt. I messaged Theo. "I think I found proof," I wrote. He wrote back, "Proof changes nothing if you refuse to change." I stared at that sentence until it felt like a floor. I labeled a folder evidence, because librarians don't waste good nouns. Then I opened a map and found the mysterious address. It was 4 blocks from the park where we made promises under lanterns that never stayed lit. Wind threaded through the alley, lifting a paper like a white flag. At the address, the door already knew my habit of ringing twice. The mini twist wasn't why, it was what. The address belonged to a shared storage unit complex, corrugated corridors that smelled like dust and decisions. At the desk, a board clerk confirmed a unit rented under Maya's alias, paid cash monthly. When someone rolled up the door 2 rows over, I glimpsed a teal suitcase that matched the one Maya kept for emergencies. Inside, the unit registered to her alias. When I finally saw it, later, with proper access, there were 2 folding chairs, a box of kitchenware we discussed buying, a small rug I'd saved in my cart, and a toothbrush still in its wrapper. A trial move-in, curated like a showroom for a life, continued without me. Not a love nest, exactly. A staging area. There was also a shoebox with printed photos, fresh, slightly curled from heat. In half of them, Maya stood with someone I recognized in fragments, a social media acquaintance, the stranger from the flirty video. Their faces were angled away from the camera, as if privacy could be a pose. The stakes snapped into place. This wasn't just about me. It was about the person who might be standing where I had stood, believing the same story under different lighting. Someone deserved the truth. I just didn't know whether my truth would help or detonate. The kettle ticked on the stove, a metronome for my thoughts. I had proof, but proof can bruise the wrong person if mishandled. I made a plan with the tenderness of a bomb technician. First, gather and duplicate everything. Screenshots, bank charges I recognized from my card when Maya insisted on reimbursement later, the storage unit contract, the rideshare logs. Second, schedule a session with Dr. Hale to name what I'd been living. Intermittent reinforcement, future faking, breadcrumbing. She discouraged jargon. Describe behaviors, she said. Name costs. Costs were easy to name once I stopped bargaining. My sleep. My friendships bent into secrets. My work focused diluted by scanning for the next apology. 1,000 small humiliations I accepted because leaving required a spine I kept loaning out. Third, decide the order. Confront privately, warn the other person, or walk away clean. Dr. Hale asked what I wanted the outcome to be. I said I wanted a time machine. She smiled kindly. Then choose the action you can live with in 12 months, she said. I copied the files to a clean drive labeled with a neutral word, notes. I wrote a script of 3 sentences, facts without adjectives. I would offer a recorded conversation. I would state that I wouldn't debate my own experience. I would not negotiate my boundaries like terms of store credit. Somewhere, a siren rose and fell, as if practicing regret. When I rehearsed, my voice shook like a ladder on uneven ground. Maya sensed distance the way some people smell rain. She arrived at my apartment with flowers I couldn't name and a playlist we used to fall asleep to, apologizing for nothing specific and everything at once. "I've been under pressure," she said, eyes bright with practiced vulnerability. "I see forever with you. I was scared of how much I feel." Her words were soft blankets over hard furniture. She love-bombed, then future-faked, drafting a shared summer with beach trips and a dog we'd finally adopt. "You're my only real one," she whispered, borrowing the line that once kept me obedient. I almost caved. Almost. But almost is just the last exit before the wrong town. I told her I wanted to talk with conditions. "Recorded," I said. "Simple. 3 sentences each. No loops." She blinked, calculating. "That's so clinical," she said, the word like a pin through a butterfly. "Can't we just be us?" I texted Theo to wait at the cafe across the street during the conversation. I held the drive in my pocket and felt steadiness return like circulation to a numb limb. When Maya saw I wouldn't budge, her eyes cooled, then warmed, then cooled again, a weather pattern I knew by heart. Somewhere upstairs a neighbor laughed, the sound brittle and echoing. She smiled sweetly and asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. We chose the small conference room at the therapist's office after hours, rented by the hour like a storage unit for fragile words. Dr. Hale agreed to sit in as a quiet witness, not a referee. Theo waited nearby with coffee, ready to walk me home if gravity failed. I set my phone to record and placed it in the middle of the table like a candle. "I'll go first," I said. "On these dates, you told me one thing while doing another. I have receipts. I won't debate. I'm informing you that I know." Maya's mouth tightened, then relaxed. "You're overinterpreting," she said, but her eyes drifted toward the phone. I described the storage unit, the calendar with initials, the rideshare logs. I did not describe my chest pounding or the way I wanted to hold her hand out of habit. "I won't be in a rotation," I said. "And someone else deserves informed choice." Maya pressed her palms flat on the table. "You're humiliating me," she said. "You love punishment." I shook my head. "I love clarity," I said. "I won't enable confusion anymore." Dr. Hale cleared her throat softly, an invisible boundary line settling in the room. The elevator cables sang their weary song, a low iron whisper. Maya asked who else I thought needed clarity, and my stomach dropped. The big reveal was quiet, which made it crueler. I slid the printed timeline across the table, highlighted with dates, amounts, and locations. Photos from the storage unit. Screenshots of messages with time stamps anchoring the story. The name of the person from the flirty video, neatly printed because my hands shook less when I used a pen. Maya blamed stress. Then she blamed me for noticing. She flickered from tears to anger to charm, showing me the carousel I'd been riding as if offering one last ticket. "It's not like that," she insisted. "You're the one I see a future with." I panicked. "Then why the duplicate calendar?" I asked. "Why the cash payments? Why a toothbrush in a unit?" She stared at me like I'd mispronounced a sacred word. "You're cruel," she said. "You're making me look bad." Dr. Hale's pen paused midair. I breathed. I told Maya I would be contacting the other person with only what concerned their choices, nothing gratuitous. She laughed once, sharp. "You'll ruin everything," she said. "You think truth is clean. It's messy." "Messy still deserves light," I said, hearing my voice steady into something I could follow out. The fridge motor rumbled, then settled, like a chest deciding to breathe. That was when the mask slipped, and her next words cut through bone. "Fallout spreads along the paths you paved for peace." Within days, mutual friends fractured into camps named by tone. Concerned, exhausted, entertained. Group chats went quiet, then loud in side threads I wasn't in. I sent a brief message to the other person with dates and facts. Their reply was a single thank you, and the kind of sigh you can read. Unfollows bloomed like frost. At work, I misfiled a postcard for the first time in years. My supervisor asked if I needed a day. I needed a decade. Guilt arrived in waves. Had I humiliated someone past the point of repair, even if I'd told the truth carefully? Dr. Hale reminded me, "You're responsible for honesty and boundaries, not for others' spin." Maya texted that I'd ruined her reputation, Then she posted a story about choosing herself. I muted, not blocked. Somewhere, I still rehearsed forgiveness I would never send. I missed the imagined future more than the person. Grief is efficient like that. Theo walked me home after we ran into a mutual at the bar who pretended not to recognize me. You paid a price, he said, but you stopped paying interest. I laughed, then cried, then slept for 9 hours like a person with a locked door. Neon bled through the blinds, painting everything with restless color. The next morning, a final message waited with a subject line, regret. Healing isn't cinematic, it's menus and mornings. I wrote down what helps and did it like homework. No contact rules, returned items in a plain box, screens out of the bedroom, breakfast before apology, water before rumination. I booked therapy weekly, even when I wanted to graduate into denial. I told Nina when I wanted to check Maya's socials, and Nina replied with photos of her cat until the urge passed. I rebuilt small routines. Thursday night pasta with extra garlic, Saturday walks past the park without lingering, Sunday calls with my parents where I told the truth without making it a movie. I kept the external artifacts of my life boring, so the internal could be loud without spilling. When I dreamed of Maya, she was always in a hallway with many doors. In the dream, I used to chase. Now I reach for the exit sign and wake up before the sprint. Progress is sometimes not running. I set conditions in writing for myself. I help me first. I do not enable stories that require me to vanish. If I date again, I will not trade peace for mystery, no matter how cleverly wrapped. A bus side outside, doors folding like a tired accordion in winter. One boundary remained untested, and life was about to knock gently. What I learned from my biggest relationship regret is embarrassingly simple. I kept negotiating with loneliness because drama felt like attention. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with honest hinges. If someone loves you, they don't need you dizzy to stay interested. I confused longing for love and apology for accountability. I stayed, and staying taught me what leaving could save. I learned to describe behaviors, not read minds. Calendar overlaps aren't poetry. Receipts are not accusations. They are timestamps of reality. Telling the truth to someone who deserved it didn't make me noble, just consistent with the person I wanted to be. I can live with that in 12 months. I can live with that now. There's a hopeful image I keep. A morning window with plants I remember to water, light warming a room that doesn't hum like a lie. There's a practical takeaway I offer you if you're watching this. Write your 3 sentences in peacetime. Decide your exit ramps before the smoke. Teach your body what steadiness feels like, so you recognize counterfeits. When the final message with the subject line, regret, arrived, I archived it without reading. Then walked to the park we once lit with lanterns and let the wind keep what it wanted. Somewhere, a siren rose and fell, as if practicing regret. Sometimes closure is a door you close yourself, and then keep walking.